Yeah, unfortunately, the politics in America have become very black and white and divisive, and he wins, we lose. And so there's a fear because of China's rise that we're going to be changed somehow or altered somehow. Anyway, we live in crazy times in America.
I just one thing I want to share with you is like we just been to US in a couple of days ago. And,
You did?
Yeah, I was in New York and I was looking around whether there's a Chinese car over there, but unfortunately I didn't saw any Chinese EV.
It's going to be very hard for Chinese car companies to establish a strong foothold in the United States, and especially if Donald Trump is elected president. He insists that the Chinese cars, tariffs on Chinese cars, even cars made in Mexico, not made in China, but made in Mexico, the tariff's going to be 100%. So he's afraid of competition with the Chinese. So yeah, it's going to be hard to imagine getting Chinese cars into the American market.
Yeah,
and my opinion, by the way, is that the tariffs hurt American consumers. I'm 100% confident that the Chinese make the best new energy vehicles. I've been on a tour of the Chery manufacturing plant in Wuhu and know the team there very well. And I read a lot of articles about BYD and others. And so for the Americans not to realize the benefit of high quality, reasonably priced, longer range electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles, it's too bad. It's unfortunate because Republicans used to believe in having, open access, having free, open trade, and as long as it's fair trade. And right now, our Republican Party has been taken over by a tariff man.
Yeah, and Trump said that if he wins, he will put much more tariffs.
Double, 100%.
Like not only on EVs, but
on
also
everything.
other goods, everything. Do you think this will trigger a second trade war with China?
Of course, it damages the United States and it damages China. So I don't know about a trade war. I'm not an economist, so I'm not sure I would use that term, trade war. But it would make trade very difficult, and would punish consumers here and consumers in the United States and manufacturers in China. What I'm finding, and it's kind of the only good news from the election so far, is that there are economists finally speaking out and writing op-ed pieces in the New York Times and in other publications about the tariffs, and they point out properly that the tariffs aren't paid for by China. They're paid for by the American consumer with rising prices. And they point out that the tariffs are not at all what Trump claims in terms of benefit to the United States. So the debunking of his tariffs is becoming more public now, which is encouraging. So we'll see if it makes an impact. I'm definitely not a Trump fan because I think his economic policies would be very harmful more harmful to the United States than Harris. And Harris is a Democrat, and I was raised in a Republican family. Trump, I think, would be worse for the economy than Harris, and hopefully Harris will win.
Like the economy relation between China and US was the ballast of the Sino-US relations.
Yeah.
And now this relation seems to be hurting. And how will this affect China-US relations?
I mean, it will continue to have the bilateral relationship spiral. My father often said that the US-China relationship is the most consequential, the most important bilateral relationship in the world. And he was right. My father recognized that China has become the second largest economy in the world, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in large measure because of our bilateral trade ties, which is something, as a freedom-loving American, is a great thing to take great pride in, because more people in China enjoy freedom. I was here in 1975 during the Cultural Revolution. Imagine the differences from 49 years ago when I first came to today, when people enjoy economic prosperity, when they achieve a certain level of wealth, the freedoms to send kids to schools and to travel and to pick businesses you want to engage in and find work that's satisfactory goes up. So there's been a massive movement, freedom movement. It may be a sensitive word to be using in communist China, but to me, it's a remarkable accomplishment that we should take pride in. On the other hand, America has become the largest economy in the world, with the largest GDP, with the largest per capita GDP, much larger than China's economy on a per capita basis. And it, in large part, happened because of globalization, and our major partner in globalization has been China. So we've had a win-win environment up until recently. China's rise has created real fear in America about our national security, our way of life. If you hear politicians talk, it's like the communists are going to come and take over America. And the word communist used to mean,
You created for the Cold War.
Communism used to be kind of what you would think of when you think of Maoist kind of communism. The communism that exists today is a very different. It has market orientation, it has capitalist elements, it has socialist elements, it has, the well-being of people has really improved significantly under this form of communism. But the American politicians use the word in a very derogatory, negative way. There's a fear because of China's rise that we're going to be changed somehow or altered somehow. It's kind of a zero-sum game. If you win, we lose. Well, that's not true. If you win, we win. If we win, you win. Everybody wins. There's a scenario out there where we both can win.
Mm-hmm. But like a scholar, Thornton, just told me in another interview, he said that most American people don't believe win-win because in a sports, no one
only one winner.
One winner.
Yeah.
How do you see this kind of rhetoric?
I'm afraid that analysis is true today, that people perceive. Well, Trump says it. He says, they're winning, we're losing, in talking about China. Yeah, I wish there were leaders in America. My father was a leader where he would explain to the people the truth about relationships, that you could have, one country grow and achieve prosperity, and the other one can grow and achieve prosperity also. That you can have winning scenarios. Yeah, unfortunately, the politics in America have become very black and white and divisive, and he wins, we lose, and there's been a lot of threatening conversation. Republicans say that Kamala Harris is a communist comrade, Kamala, and that she's going to make our economy go into a deep hole. And the Republicans say that Trump is a wannabe dictator, and he has no perspective on anything but his own ego and his own self. Anyway, we live in crazy times in America.
Yeah, you talk about freedom and globalization. For many people here in China now think actually U.S. was the leader of globalization, and the idea was shared by the collective West. But now China is a big supporter of globalization, and the U.S. is in favor of protectionism. How do you see this trend?
I was recently listened to a podcast from an economist that explained that because of the disenfranchised population in America, Donald Trump is exploiting a feeling in America among many, many people that they've been left behind. So they're the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots are being led to believe that because of China's taking our jobs, because of globalization, their lot in life has been weakened. They're not getting the same. So the whole notion of globalization has become to mean something that's been taken from you. And there are a lot of people in America that are not doing as well, and therefore are vulnerable to a message that says it's their fault. We're going to stop it. We're not going to do trade with them, or we're going to raise tariffs, get money from them. The rhetoric is trying to play to that weakness in the American psyche right now that many people suffer. I do think there is a problem with income disparity. There are some very poor people, and there are some people that are doing better, obviously. And that's probably true in China as well, but China has a different way of addressing it. America is. Do
you believe it's a domestic problem, or rather than blaming China?
It definitely has, the seeds of it are domestic, but China's an easy target. It's an easy scapegoat. You know what I mean? So both parties are piling on and beating up China.
You saw the crazy China week, 25 bills passed against China.
Yeah, I do think it's crazy. I think there's a lot of fault. I know many scholars who are experts on China, China's development, and U.S.-China relations, who believe that the false narratives about China's intentions, as China rises, there's a fear that China, will want to take America's place as a global peacekeeper in the world, or with global influence, or that China is going to change our way of life, or the communism is going to slip into the American political system somehow, or culturally we're going to change. There's all these fears because of false narratives, and unfortunately, with the freedom we have in social media and communications, I can't imagine how we can, weed out fake from real news. I'm not sure that America has come close to solving the problem.
Yeah, but as you said, America is a free country. Why it's so difficult to gather the truth about China in a country with free flow of information?
That's my question. I was going to ask you, why do you think that? I have no idea. I think that because of our freedoms, people can say anything they want, whether it's true or not. And if you say it often enough, it becomes truth. Donald Trump has said over and over and over again that the Chinese are paying for the tariffs. The Chinese are paying for the tariffs. We know, economists know, everyone who can think for themselves knows that the American consumers are paying for the tariffs, not China. China is being punished through tariffs, and the manufacturing is being hit because of tariffs. For sure, there's a negative impact on China, but there's but the payment for these tariffs is coming from America. But if you say something over and over and over again, it becomes truth. And there's no way to correct that truth. At least you can't wave a magic wand. You can't make a law or legislation, that forces people to believe that that's false and this is true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People believe in America. Many people believe that the election was a hoax, was a fraud, and that that Trump won big. He didn't win big. It's become clearly established. There were court cases after court case that validated the election results in all these states, and yet Trump says it over and over and over again, and his people believe it. I don't understand it. In a day and age where we have such amazing communications and transparency, where anybody can get information easily, still these false narratives continue to be propagated, and you can't clean it up. I wish there was a way to wave that magic wand.
People are very curious here in China, saying, what is the fair competition here? U.S. people are always talking about fair competition.
Yeah.
My last question. Yeah.
Fair competition is an interesting question because I've been doing work here in China for many years. I've also recently been spending a lot of time in Saudi Arabia. And I've noticed that in countries that are developing new economic sectors, that the government plays an important role in providing early funding. So in Saudi Arabia, they've got a sovereign fund called PIF, P-I-F, the Private Investment Fund. And they, for example, started a new automobile manufacturing sector. And PIF put up all the money to start a company called Sear. They put up the biggest chunk, maybe all the money, for another electric vehicle company that's got manufacturing base in the United States, but is building manufacturing. So they're building a whole sector, bringing in supply chain, et cetera, putting all this money in. The idea is that at some point, the car business, the car manufacturing ecosystem will be so big that it will grow naturally, organically, without government aid. So government, my point is that sovereign funds, whether they're provincial funds from Anhui province helping start a car sector or a high-tech business of some kind, or whether it's a national fund, those funds that are invested are perceived by Americans and by others to be kind of in the category of unfair trade, because these car companies or these other companies were given kind of, government subsidies or government investment capital to ensure that they would be successful. So my question that I would ask people, is it really unfair, or is it just smart? I mean, I live in a state called Texas. We have a very beautiful state, very free economy. We have the largest petroleum and natural gas resources. We also have the largest wind and sun. We're blessed like Saudi Arabia with lots of energy. I would think that if I were governor of Texas, I would form a sovereign fund, a state of Texas fund, and I would invest in things like electric vehicle manufacturing or hybrid vehicle manufacturing. I'm not really a big believer long-term in electric vehicles, I think, especially in America. I think hybrid cars that can get very long range make more sense. But I would seed a sector, build it up, and then let it take off on its own, because that should be okay. And that I wouldn't consider that unfair trade. I would consider it smart trade. I do believe, though, where there's direct subsidy on products just to beat the price overseas, of course, where there's that kind of direct intervention, yes, you've got to cut it off and consider that unfair, and there should be fairness across the board. So yes, long, crazy answer.
Yes.